Welcome to the Expert in You podcast, the show for professional entrepreneurs, experts, authors, speakers, coaches, and consultants who are ready to elevate their business, expand their influence, and boost their bank accounts. Join us as we dive deep with industry-leading experts who share their top strategies, invaluable insights, practical tips, and personal experiences to help you achieve extraordinary growth and success. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills, stay ahead of the curve, or find that competitive edge, this podcast is your ultimate resource for unlocking your full potential. So tune in, get inspired, grab your coffee, and let's unlock the expert in you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Carden, and I'm really excited for my guest today. I have Steve Sawyer with me. He is a senior managing partner of SolvingX. He works mainly in the healthcare field. He has an amazing background, so much experience, and he is going to really shine a light on what he does in the healthcare field, also his background in technology and how he utilizes that. And so I know you are going to get so much value and gain so much from this podcast. So Steve, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be on your show.
Yes, you have so much experience and such a background. And I know you like to use the word eclectic. I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about that, but why don't you just give my audience a little bit more background about you and kind of how you got into doing what you're doing now and exactly what you do now that is helping your clients.
Thank you for the opportunity and to be on your show.
You're
welcome. It's a real honor and a pleasure. The background, and you hit the nail on the head, eclectic, because I didn't go to my undergrad for what I do today. I just kind of stumbled upon and found it, or it found me. And the three areas I always use in the back of the word eclectic is kind of three pillars. One is supply chain operations. Mm-hmm. Second is facilities management, also sometimes referred to as integrated facilities management. And the third is technology. And I'll kind of go backwards to kind of give you the path, if you would, of how I fell into this. But technology and facilities management were actually the first two of the professional career as I graduated from, again, Radford, which is my undergrad, Radford University. And I got lucky, candidly, because my wife at the time was still at Radford. And so the first role that I got was at Virginia Tech, which for those that geography-wise, that's 45 minutes away from Radford. So I'll start with, something greater than me gave me that opportunity to be within a close proximity, waiting until she graduated versus, a distance of a relationship. And then that opportunity, back to two of the three, back to eclectic, I just had an aptitude and an interest, and I didn't have kids. So I had extra time at hand. And I used that extra time, and this is kind of a unique thing, but it really happened. As I was managing Squire students in our Virginia Tech, first gig out of school, I wanted to hit a grand slam. But we used to get all kinds of complaints about this is broke, that is broke, I need this or that. Well, they didn't have at the time, and this shows age, this was many years ago, but they didn't have technology. Candidly, I didn't go to school because that's when the internet had just really come out to show back to age. So I didn't have the luxury of ChatGPT. I didn't have a lot of the luxuries that today we do have. Right. So long story short, just to give you kind of a visualization, I got hammered with requests. And one day the light bulb just went off and I said, there's got to be an easy way to do this. So where I'm headed with this is kind of back to another background, but it's a dot connector. And so I walked into the lecturing hall of one of the rooms where the professors, do that to the lectern. And I looked up and I was like, bingo, I could probably build this in Excel. And that's exactly what I did. Is I went back down and built it from an aerial view looking at the lectern, and every seat had a highlighted color representing the type of maintenance or repair that needed it. That was game changing, something so simple. Then I started building what I call room setups and conference for special events so that we wouldn't scramble kind of thinking about what the interested party wanted, rather give them a template. Hey, does this work for you? So all of that, though so primitive, was transformational back then, candidly. And that kind of spearheaded the next steps. And then I went into healthcare. state jobs are great for benefits, but very low pay. And
Mm-hmm.
so as I wanted to progress my career, the doors opened at Carilion Clinic in Roanoke, Virginia. And that was my pathway into healthcare for over 20 years. And I was
Mm-hmm.
very fortunate in that role because back to it wasn't my background, but the first job I got was in bad debt collections. And so it was a sales
Mm-hmm.
position. And what's interesting is that's a for-profit entity of the system, which is a not-for-profit healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
And so my job was to sell. Candidly, I wasn't a good salesman because I'm too direct and, coming from a type A background, but I actually crushed and rebuilt the entire company. And how I
Wow.
did that was candidly just like the example I started without repeating. But when I came into that role, my phone rang and we had all these accounts that were literally in boxes. And so back to kind of a dot connector and looking, there's got to be a better way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so long story short, and back to not having children at the time, I just made use of that aptitude and interest and self-taught myself at the wee hours in the morning and nights, and, and literally rebuilt the company by an e-commerce platform. And we did over 9 million accounts, 90,000 accounts electronically
Wow.
transferred. Then I built metrics and we blew it out of the water in 8 months. The CIO became a mentor. And then everybody wanted to know, how did you do this? And I'm like, well, I did it in Microsoft Access. And then all your IT people are like, no way in heck you did it in Access. Like, no, I really did. And so the trajectory just kind of to fast track this, it then opened the doors internally to a lot of new roles. I then
Mm-hmm.
went in from the same hospital system into, at the time, they had their own benefits department. Candidly, I know zero about benefits back then, other than I know what an HMO and a PPO was. That was about
Right.
the context. But I automated that opportunity where I could put my feet on the desk and hit a button and then spit out. If you go back in time, you remember the big manuals we used to get of all your
Yes.
competitors.
Yes.
There's a
Oh my
point in
goodness.
time I'll take you back to. So I
Yes.
worked myself out of a job and it was a new kind of what I call evolutionary role, inventive role, and that was within HR. And
Mm-hmm.
within HR, they had the vision of the automated, but they didn't know what they didn't know. And candidly, nor did I, because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know HR at that time. So the opportunities back to dot connecting opened up and I was able to automate. And then that's kind of what led to the trajectory of the career path. But I automated HR. I tried to patent it. I called it HRE 360, but that's where I integrated Lawson. And then what's again today back, I'm kind of laughing because it shows the age, but back then, if you can go back and remember the handwriting of an employment application, and then we moved into the online employment application, it was just painful.
Mm-hmm.
But what I was able to do at that time was integrate, unknowns to the applicant, I put all the work onto the applicant. So all the other fields of information that were required for a background check company, for the applicant tracking system, to the e-learning when you were hired, you took online e-learning courses, then back to our HR system. That's the 360, is that
Mm-hmm.
applicant took a chunk of the work away manually, and we reduced post to fill by 15 days. And then lastly, kind of fast tracking this to be more quicker is the Premier World. As I presented around the US, unknowns to me at the time, my wife was pregnant. She's holding a 3-year-old in her lap, but my future supervisor was in the audience at Swan and Dolphin and Disney and approached me. And that's what then opened up HRIS facilities. And then I moved into supply chain
Mm-hmm.
and became an expert in 50 different industries, thanks to a committee who helped me become more intelligent about the industries and the vendors. And then that moved me into the world of property and real estate because I was recruited by CBRE and then moved laterally over to JLL to run their Americas for healthcare supply chain. So it's been a unique ride, but I go back to the word eclectic because again, I didn't go back in the original days to learn supply chain. I didn't learn facilities nor technology. It's just one of those things you get lucky. And then along that way, I had tremendous mentors that put a foot in my butt to make sure that I stayed focused. And
Mm-hmm.
I really embraced it.
You do so many things. I mean, I love how everything evolved, and that's often what happens when you've been around for a long time. And yes, I'm sharing my age too, but things really evolve. So when you go in, so in healthcare today, what is the primary role that you have, and what is it you actually do in the
So,
healthcare field?
so healthcare or non, it's the same. It's a great question. It's the same approach. The
Mm-hmm.
difference is I call it it's 80-20, 70-30. And what I mean by that is healthcare is unique, just like pharma or life sciences. Whereas kind of going backwards into the eclectic three pillars, a door is a door, an elevator is an elevator, and landscape is landscape. I don't care if it's a hospital, I don't care if it's a financial institution, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, it starts with what I call you have to, before I sign my name on a contract, I have to know more than a client. And what I mean by that is, first of all, I think listening is key. And by
Mm-hmm.
listening, I think you got to understand what is your pain points, that is, why are we even chatting? And I'll
Right.
always have assumptions like any normal person, but I need to understand what is your want and what is your need specific. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, it's kind of like the FBI shows of forensics. There is a lot of data that is required. And let me explain the why. It's very simple. If I don't have the data, and I can give you examples, but there's no way in the world for me to tell you I can help you, period. So
Right.
transparency into the pain is really the key de facto into that. And then there's a trust. And the
Mm-hmm.
trust is earned with the no hair that I have today and the scars that I've earned over the years. But been there, done it, seen it. I think just about everything, from the good, the bad, and the ugly, and helping that client see you as a trusted advisor, I
Mm-hmm.
think is key and instrumental. Because if they know you walk the walk, and I'll give another example back to the 70-30 or 80-20. I've seen those without naming names, that's irrelevant. But I've seen those try to walk into those shoes within the specialty areas, acting as if they do understand. You can sniff that out in 2 minutes, whether or not they have a background.
Right.
Unless they understand Joint Commission, DNV, the
Mm-hmm.
regulatories in healthcare. But most important, I think this goes into back to walking the walk and talking the talk. One of the big things I do today, and then I'll come back into your ask, but I think this complements it, Ann, is you need to understand what you're doing has a purpose. And that may
Mm-hmm.
sound like a loaded answer, but I sincerely mean that. And what I mean about it is thanks to Carillion giving me the opportunity to be in healthcare and then walk around many hospitals, the biggest in the US. I've been to most of them. I always find it important, and I train my staff to do this. If you don't think or like your job or think you have a purpose, do me a favor, just drop your pen, drop your computer, walk down the halls of oncology, walk down which is cancer patients, walk
Mm-hmm.
down the halls of a NICU or a PACU with infants, and it's humbling, cut to the chase.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden, every dollar you save, candidly, is a reinvestment in patient care. That's the DNA that I live by. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
gives you purpose on what you do every day.
I love that. So you help them really cut their expenses, cut their
Mhm.
costs so they can reinvest it back into patient care, run a better
Reduce risk.
facility. Yes. Oh, awesome. Yeah, was such a worthy cause as well. So I love that. What are the things that you love the most about your job? When you yeah,
Um,
what do you love? What do you not love about it?
so I think, that's a great
I hate to
question.
say job. Wait a minute. Your business.
My business.
Yes. Yes. As
I
a
think
trusted advisor.
I think I enjoy pain and problems.
I think, wait a minute, as an entrepreneur, I think we all enjoy that to some
Fair
degree.
point. So I kind of always tell people if I work in a manufacturing plant, I just can't handle repetitive tasks. I go
Yeah.
crazy. That's just how I'm wired.
Hmm.
And then the irony is I'm also OCD more than you want to know, but I'm very articulate with documentation
Hmm.
because I don't like, back to the same point, doing things twice. And I don't think you can be innovative if you're constantly going back, spinning your wheels to do the same things twice.
Yeah. And I've seen his software that he's created, and it's extremely impressive. So I get what you're saying.
So, and what do I enjoy about it? Candidly, is a lot of things, but I'll keep it quick. One is friendship. There are
Hmm.
folks today that just, I mean, they're like friends, but they're really family members. And a lot of
Yeah.
that is because I've enjoyed not just who they are, but what they've taught me. And
Hmm.
I've learned a lot. And those would be suppliers. I mean, that could be clients, all the above. Number two, what I enjoy is the learning aspect. And,
Hmm.
back to kind of getting a kick in the right direction when I was younger in my career, but he's still a mentor today. And I think that's a key. As I mentioned mentors in the beginning, you have to have a mentor to understand criticisms of where they're going to
Yes.
tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. It's what you
Right.
need to
Right.
hear.
Hmm.
And also, the vision of what opportunities are out there should you, and that's keyword you, take advantage and you persevere and go after it. And that's where I
Hmm.
went back later in life to get my MBA.
Or
very
not go after it. Sometimes it's not, right?
right.
It's to not do things.
I mean,
Yeah.
candidly, I didn't want to go
Mhm.
get an MBA. I got lucky just to get out of undergrad. I was
Mhm.
on more of a networking journey than I was getting out of school. I still hear about that today. But anyways, later in life, I went back thanks to the mentorship and had some
Mhm.
really tough times. My wife had cancer, who got through it, knock on wood.
Oh,
We had
wow.
little kids. And then, going back, I was in a professional career where I traveled a lot. And then, oh, by
Mhm.
the way, let's go ahead and add MBA and go get that. So
Yes.
the beauty of it is we got through it. The challenges of life were upon us. So back to what I like, it's back to that. I must like pain because it's both professional, but I wouldn't be where I'm at back to the mentorships and the vendors. And I would say the last thing is back to that willingness to learn. There was a phrase that I used to use. I don't use it as quite often anymore, but it was really back to how I'm wired, and that's the word no. I don't accept it. No
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it can't be done. No just means either you're lazy or you don't know how to do it, which is fair, or
Mhm.
you don't have the
Right.
resources to get it done, which is fair. But the
Mhm.
word no, by definition, doesn't mean it's impossible. And
Right.
so a lot of those challenges, going back into the eclectic background, have literally transformed entire companies, some of which global. And a lot of that, I wasn't smart enough. I'll cut to the chase to have the vision, but I was lucky enough to be given an opportunity and smart enough to know how to reach out to smarter people than I to document
Mhm.
together. So that's,
Yeah.
to answer your question a little
Sounds
long-winded.
like you're a little bit resourceful, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I embraced the challenge,
Mhm.
and I guess that's the de facto, if you would.
If you think about one client or one maybe healthcare facility that you worked with that really stands out with the results that you were able to provide, is there one that kind of jumps out at you that you're really proud of and you want to share those?
There's a lot of them,
I
but
know there's a lot of them.
but one of them, I would say, what's really helped me back to becoming more, I guess, aged and tenured in a profession is simplifying the process. Meaning, when I was
Mhm.
younger, my goal was I gotta win, which hasn't changed. But what has changed is the maturity and the
Mhm.
professionalism. As I've aged, I've really stepped back to answer your question and said, what do clients really want? Where have I been and what do they not like?
Mhm.
And the light bulb, back to the light bulb going off, was you need to help people. So it kind of goes back into that example I went about the oncology and the NICU and the PACU. But what I've learned is treat the client and their staff like you treat your children, period. And when they become more successful than that's all you need to do because they may not have, and again, I feel ignorant when I say this, but you just learn it over age, I guess, and experiences.
Mhm.
Not every client has the internal resources that I've been extremely fortunate in my career between Premier, CBRE, JLL. I mean, they're like two of which, number one and two in the world globally in real estate and property management. Premier, whatever, two or number three, but still one of the most largest, if you would, group purchasing organization. And prior to that was Carilion Clinic, who's not a small hospital system, but internally they had the resources for education that you could advance yourself in should you want to do it. But not every
Mhm.
client has that. The last thing related is really a phrase that I've embraced, and that's the coach to player back to like children. And it's not like I'm saying you treat them like children, but it's the concept. And the concept is when you walk into an organization. So I'm kind of giving you an answer that's more recent than in years prior,
Mhm.
but it really is giving what I call a toolbox to the staff. So they don't feel when you walk in there, and that's another key message is I'm not here to take your job. I'm here to help
Right.
you and your job and your company. And by
Mhm.
teaching them as a coach to a player approach, you've removed that animosity, you've removed that concern. And look, I'm your advisor. I'm here to make you a success. If you're a success, I've done my job. And that's
Yes.
so to answer your question, we've had a client as of recent, and it was great just to kind of sit back. And when I saw the light bulb go off, that was one of the most humbling and rewarding professional experiences because you got to see something that to you is simple, but it's not simple to those unless they know it.
Right.
And
It's
because they
just
didn't have
you're
it.
so used to it. Yes, you're
Right.
so
I'm
used
immune
to
to it.
it.
So
Yes.
that's where back to kind of tying two different things,
Mhm.
an earlier question, but that's both a current over the last few years, but also it's addressed, the other aspect of life is trying to combine different aspects of life because
Mhm.
you don't need to overcomplicate it. Just keep it simple. And it
Yes.
kind of goes
You're
back, move
singing
on
my
to others.
song.
Yeah, you do unto others, you want them to do for you. And I think that's a
Hmm.
powerful message. As long as you embrace it, is their success is you. So I'll pause there, but I think that's again what I really value.
I love that. And it's so important too. As I'm listening to you, I can really hear your passion. I can hear your why you do this. And I really can hear your heart in that. And I believe that people are so attracted to that and they're so drawn to that in the marketplace today because it sounds like it should be normal. It's not. It is not a normal thing out there. So I love that you shared that and you kind of let us see that side of you. As a trusted advisor, I love that you use that language because I use that a lot when I'm helping consultants. You want to almost be seen as a partner to them. You want to
Mhm.
be seen as a trusted advisor, not an extra pair of hands, so to speak. And to me, that's where the biggest opportunities are when you're working as a consultant, as in that kind of a role. Have you found that as well? And what has
100%.
shifted for you, and maybe when you started kind of your consulting to what you do now? Like where did that transition kind of happen for you?
I think a lot of it happened when I was at a GPO because I went into the first role, which became really two roles they created, which was amazing for them. I was over their HRIS department, technology, because that's where I left back to the healthcare. I audited, and now I got discovered.
Mm-hmm.
But the irony is, I was also over their facilities, and which was pretty unique because I was able to automate some things back to technology.
Mm-hmm.
So when I moved, and it was literally upstairs into a role at the time that they had 35 industries or 35 categories. And there was a committee of advisors that awarded our contracts. That's the model of the traditional group purchasing organization. But back to listening and being smart, I knew I was not going to be the smartest guy walking in a room with 18, 20 plus years, senior executives running your biggest healthcare systems in the US. So, and then you have suppliers that you're having to sell to as much as a committee to sell them the value of why they want to continue to go in a process to become an awarded supplier. So to kind of answer your question, it was back to learning from these experts. It was
Mm-hmm.
back to giving an opportunity to grow 15, because originally it was 35. We grew the portfolio together to 50 different industries. So to be a subject matter expert in 50 industries is not normal, but it's
Right.
back to the opportunity. And when I leapfrogged that to go in the world of real estate and property management, I understood real estate, but very little. Dan, I mean, I understood categories, I understood industries like an
Mm-hmm.
expert. So that opportunity to your ask really gave me insights to things that candidly would have never had the experience of running thousands of properties across the US. Now
Mm-hmm.
you come back into technology and back to the three pillars, Ian, and that's where back to I love it. I have the aptitude, but being able to add that value into those roles and those organizations to automate things they weren't doing added value to a client, but as much as it added value to the organization because they weren't doing it, it was transformational. So that kind of tenure going back to the early days of the bad debt collections through HR, I mean, it's been a continuation, but that's the beauty of the eclecticness is I didn't have these experiences. I was just given the shot to do it. I wasn't smart enough to have a path or a vision to do it. I just look at it as like a Lego set and things just started to stack up
Right.
that complemented my background to be able to look at things a little bit differently. I guess I've
Mm-hmm.
always had and tried to back to the word no, trying to figure out how I can solve for it versus acceptance.
Yes. That that's so important, and this is an important thing too, and you mentioned it earlier. You said there are people that kind of claim to be experts, but you can see very quickly that they're not. And you have specialized in what you do, but because of all the background and all of the ways, like you said, really your value has just stacked. Your skills, your experience, your knowledge, it's just stacked that value. And that's why you're really able to step into that trusted advisor role because you have so much there that you can bring to the table. And not a lot of people can do that. I mean, it really does take years of experience to be able to do that. Hi, friend. I have an exciting announcement. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Expert in You podcast, but I have to ask you, have you checked out the latest issue of Expert in You magazine yet? It's jam-packed with rich content, powerful strategies, inspiring stories, and so much more to help you elevate your business and personal growth. Don't miss out. Go grab your digital copy now and join our community of experts making a difference every day. Go to expertinyoumagazine.com and check out your digital copy today. Transform your expertise into success with Expert in You magazine. It's not just a publication, it is a movement. How do you get your clients, Steve? I know we have a lot of consultants that will be listening to this and probably some in healthcare. How do you get your clients?
So a couple of ways. One is trusted friends and allies and family.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
think
you've been doing this for a long time, so yes.
So that's one. Two would be really trying to focus on the brand.
Mm-hmm.
The big component of brand equity complements your abilities because it's the first thing they'll see. And then if you open your mouth and you can't speak it, well, then that's on you. So really putting attention to detail on what and how a company presence should look like. You know, is it professional? Does it answer a lot more than they want to know? Maybe that's good or bad. That's an individual perspective. And I think the third is really back to, I go back into trusted advisors, but this is kind of a new term. I touched on it briefly, but strategic partners, which are vendors. And vendors, I mean, the power of giveth and taketh is just another area of success or failures. And so I've been working very closely with many different companies throughout my entire career. And companies, whether it's SiteLink, who's gotten into become new and innovative in the world of construction, and the world that I'm going to move them into is facilities maintenance. Johnson Controls, who everyone knows is a global leader. I was very fortunate to be recognized by them as a healthcare advisor.
That's amazing.
And that's a recent, just a privilege, candidly. But, you know, there's other companies. And I'll say lastly is, you know, it's like this opportunity. I mean, I've done a lot of presentations around the US in the earlier years of my career. Never done a podcast, done many Zoom calls, but I think
I'm honored.
well, I'm honored. And I just think that, you know, you have to embrace these changes. And that goes back into me talking to a client, and that's change management. The last thing, what I'm doing is a couple of other things aside from the podcast today and the announcement with JCI Johnson Controls, which I posted this morning. But that's also building off where I started, and that's years ago writing various articles. And those were all self-pursued. I never got help. I had to do it on my own. Kind of crazy, but it worked. And that solicitation has opened up another door for another article with a major magazine. And then I'm writing my first book. I know you're working, congratulations on your fourth book. So I'm a little late to the party, but so I got a lot of learning to do, but I could tell you it's from a self-reflection, it's been one of the best things, back to your earlier question. It just adds to the toolbox and the tool belt of really getting to know myself better, which may sound odd, but when you haven't written a book, as I'm just getting into it, moving along pretty quick, it's just opened up doors internally that I hadn't thought about, candidly. It's either maybe I'm too busy and it's too assumed, but it's having to challenge my mental capacity of like, did I do that right? Do I want to say this? Do I want to say that? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. So it's been a rewarding and humbling experience that I hope continues once I get to the end and get it published. But I think that too, to answer your question, all of this, you just have to, you have to go full throttle. And if you don't, your business will tank.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up because, you know, that's near and dear to my heart, right? Is building a solid brand. And it's a big piece of what I help my clients do. And it's so important. I think in the marketplace today, we have seen shifts where you can't do things. You can't just rely on referrals anymore. You have to play a bigger game. And I talk about this all the time. You have to stay relevant to what the changes are in the market. And if you don't have a book, you don't look like an expert, even though you might have all of this experience, all of this knowledge, right? People are still being passed over because they don't look like they are as good as they are. So that outside perception, that's the part of a solid brand. That's the part of positioning. It's that foundation, because it is the first thing people see before they ever look under the hood and see the experience and see the skill set and the knowledge and the wisdom. They're going to say, oh, this person it doesn't look like they're that good. And so you get passed over. And one of the things that I tell people today, and we didn't mean for this to turn into a branding podcast, but I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it's important people realize that these are the changes that have evolved in the market. And if you don't do that, for example, if someone hears Steve Sawyer's name, even if you're a referral, they're going to Google you. If they Google you, what are they going to see? Are they going to see that you're the expert at this, that you have all of this experience, that you come up at the top, like you really shine above other people? Or are they going to see that it looks like you haven't done much? And that's just the way the market is today. Before the internet, before technology and all of those things, people advertised in magazines and did all of that, right? But now it's so easy, it's at our fingertips. And that's, I help a lot of people get on stages and speak. And one of the things that I tell them is, look, if you don't have a strong Google presence, that's that person that is hiring speakers. Even if you're sending a speaker reel, and even if you're sending that one sheet, they're going to Google. That's going to be the person. Because why? Because it's easy. It's easy. It's easier to do that than read through a bunch of one sheets and read through a bunch of stuff, right? They'll just Google and say, oh, wow, look what this person's done. So it's important that people understand these changes in the marketing landscape. And without it, I feel like the foundation isn't there. And I believe that you will lose opportunities. And I think it's going to only get even more, it's going to be even more relevant in the future, because there's a lot of noise out there. There are a lot of people that have come into the industries, and, consulting is a $200 billion a year industry. That's a lot of competition. And so people are figuring that out. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, even though that wasn't the direction we were going to go here. It's important. You're seeing that.
Well, to your point, I go back into the prior lives, if you would, and that brand equity, to have that authentic look, but professional look. And there was a phrase or something to the context I learned back to one of the mentors. He goes, it doesn't matter where you are. Just know there's always eyes, whether you know them or not. There's always an eye on you.
Yes.
Or in this case, a company. But you're that representative of another employer if you work for them, yourself. And I always kind of embrace that, because as we're younger and a little bit more let's say excitable, and everything is new, it's too easy to go off the rails, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So kind of keeping that in the back on your shoulder, and just be smart about where you're at in your environment, and do all the things of why you're where you're at. Don't give reasons for alternatives. So you're right. I mean, that's kind of how I looked at it. And then creating my own company, I've had companies pretty much off and on since the beginning of my career, from a website development company, like a mom and pop, to bigger. And that brand equity, I even focused back then, but that goes back into the employers teaching me and showing me why it's important, from a logo to the presence, and to what it just is, the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. So Steve, do you get out and do you do a lot of speaking in your business to bring in clients or to be seen? What are some of the things that you do beyond referrals and things like that?
Well, I have in many years prior. I mean, I presented at national conferences, but I kind of took a hiatus, because when I left the world of real estate and property management, thanks to COVID, is becoming one of many
It definitely threw a monkey wrench in a lot of things.
I didn't see it coming, but again, it was an awkward, uncomfortable, and the best thing that ever happened, because it pushed me off to walk that plank. It pushed me off without me having control. And so when I fell, the first question, like, oh Lord, what am I going to do? And then I had to step back, self-evaluate, and say, just take a deep breath. And where are you at in your career? What can you add as value? So the short of it is, that was kind of the stepping stone, no pun intended. And that became a part of what I'll say a niche consulting firm, trying to understand, what do I need to create? And it took me years. I mean, we're going on year 5 or 6. But to answer your question, it's a now. And 2025, last year, was the biggest year we ever had, both revenue and just opportunities at hand. And last year, prior to the beginning of this year, my goal and vision was to take it to the next level. So I do plan to get back to where I was in those roots of years prior. But I didn't have the financial support, because the company was still maturing. I mean, we all know if you can make it past a death sentence of 3 years, that's to make it or break it.
Yes.
So got past that, thank goodness. And
Mhm.
that gave me just kind of that next level of self-value and for the company. And then landing and showing and getting letters of recommendations to back that confidence up.
Mhm.
So this year is going to be the pivotal year. The book I mentioned, this podcast,
Mhm.
again, thank you. The
You're
article,
really working on brand growth this year, aren't you? That's one of
100%.
the things you're
But I
doing.
didn't have like I said, I just didn't have it wasn't the right time in years prior because
Mhm.
of survival mode. And then
Sure.
candidly, there's so many things as an entrepreneur and a business owner, as you know better than anyone, better than I, there's so many things you have to do. Like
Yes.
it's not your day job, it is your life. And so things that seem so, peddly or little goes back into the brand of the company. And,
Mhm.
and one thing I'll say I've heard, but it's a difference to hear it, but until you do it. And as a company business owner or founder, it doesn't matter, sun up to sundown. It's what feast or famine
Mhm.
versus those that work for you. And again, they bring great value. You have to have support, but it's your livelihood that takes the hit. It's what you put in that you're going to get out. And the good news, I didn't need someone to push me on that because I'm pretty high functionally wired all the time.
Mhm.
But it was a little bit nerve wracking when I stepped back, like, oh my gosh, I got to do this, I got to do that. Because it's like a 360 versus a 180 of
Mhm.
a laser focus of your job. So that,
Right.
from an entrepreneurial spirit, was eye opening, candidly. You just don't know what you don't know. They didn't teach me that in school. They gave me some
Right.
peripherals in the MBA, but they didn't push me on a plank and say, go do it,
Yeah.
versus give me a business plan.
So are you excited? It sounds like you're very excited about your company and where the direction
Right.
it's going and your future. And I want to ask one more question, just because I know we have a lot of consultants that will be listening to this podcast. And because you work in the healthcare field, and I know I already talked to you about this, so I know the answer, but I just want to share this. One of the things I talk about is pricing a lot when people are working with clients. And so you do value pricing. Would you explain sort of your pricing model just a little bit with what you do?
So pricing as into a client or
Yeah.
pricing
So
as
when you're working with a client. Hmm.
so different models that we all know. There's shared savings. There's what I call fixed rates. There's
Hmm.
many different ways to get to that. But what I found is the best answer is just be back to transparency. But here's my rate based on back to the forensics and the data collection. Because once I understand what their budget is, and that's not
Hmm.
just because I'm going to use that to my advantage, it's once I add that as one of many other things that I need to evaluate where I can bring them as an organization,
Hmm.
financially drawing savings and efficiencies. So the answer is a fixed rate. And then, how has that come up or about? Do I get to a fixed rate? Pretty easy because I've done it for so many years
Hmm.
with the industry leaders, and I'm not them. I don't have to be them. I don't have the overhead. Our
Hmm.
company is small and niche. We're kind of like a SEAL Team 6. We're going to walk in the door and then to answer your question and say, look, once I get this data, I'm going to tell you point blank, I can't help you, or here's where I know I can help you. And here's what that fee is going to be.
Hmm.
And ask me anything you want about a cost. The other thing I think is important that is back to, again, transparency, but it is a measurable goals that you have to hit.
Right.
Because if you don't include that into the contractual obligations, then you're paying me for what?
Exactly.
There needs to be a performance metric that
Yes.
gives that clear trajectory of where you're heading. And it's you and they as a partner. It's not just
Hmm.
about one-sided. So I'll pause there and just say, that's how I've determined to do it because I've been a part of all flavors. And if you want to do a cost or shared savings, you kind of open yourself up for being vulnerable because what if the client disagrees with you? So now you
Right.
get blood, sweat, equity that
Hmm.
is a disagreement that prevents you from getting paid
Hmm.
versus this is my fee. If you don't like it, that's okay. Because again,
Yeah.
and that roadmap. So I'll pause there.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's important. I see a lot of consultants that are charging by the hour, they charge by the day, or they're, and and I really talk against that because I say, look, if you're an expert, you're actually going to get paid less than somebody that's a beginner, that it's going to take them a lot longer to get the job done. And so I really do believe in pricing by outcome, by result, transformation, whatever that looks like, and what's the value of that. And in giving them that flat rate. I also think it breaks down the walls between I think it breaks down the resistance between a client and a trusted advisor or a partner, because now they're not focused on the money. They already know what the money's going to be. They already know what the outlay is going to be. And I think then it just builds a much more solid relationship. That's my take on it. That's what I have found.
The other thing too, Ann, and it's what you stated was brilliant. And the thing I would only add to that is by giving them a fee that's a fixed fee for the work that you do,
Mhm.
enables their finance in that department to accurately budget.
To
If it's
budget. That's right. Mhm.
fluctuated, how do you budget for an unknown or an uncertainty?
Exactly.
I don't
Yes.
like it, but that's a me personal. But that's
Mhm.
another reason why I think helping a client understand their financial obligations with a clear, delineated,
Mhm.
that's an easier to digest than an uncertainty.
Oh,
And
I agree.
the other thing I'll add to
100%.
that, and you touched on this, but just to close a loop on back to the technology, and thank you, you're very kind in your feedback. But when I design different companies and technologies, the one thing back to helping them understand where they're at, I call it looking in the mirror. Because when I can show you your physical and correct it, so in other words, bad general ledger, bad
Mhm.
account payable, meaning they're not normalized naming conventions, where the costs are allocated, not just by vendor, but also by real estate property, which is sometimes referred to as prop tech, and also more what I call demographic information about a property and a vendor. I've seen many tools out there, and I won't give much feedback about that. But what I will say is that transparency into the technology complements, because I had to do it on my own. I had
Mhm.
to fact finding to understand what obligations I'm signing my name to in the company to drive those value and savings. So just to kind of close the loop on that, that too, looking in the mirror is really a fundamental trust factor to the client, because I can be candid without naming them, but I had two of the largest in the US. One's medical office, one is children's pediatrics. There's just two clients. And like most clients, they did everything as expected. That can't be real. That can't be correct. But
Mhm.
looking in that mirror showed them, when I was able to point click and show them, here's your data. Now here's where I
Mhm.
corrected it. Now here's what is the opportunity at hand if we sign a deal. I think that goes back into confidence, trust, transparency. And then more importantly, they have to eat crow, because it's hard to see yourself as really even being in bad shape or dire straits, but that's why they
Right.
hire you. And I
Yes.
think that's back to being that friend and an advisor that's critical, is that you are vulnerable, open yourself up, but you're showing with confidence what they gave you, and then showing them what the tomorrow good could look like
Right.
or
Building
great.
that vision and where you can take them, the opportunity. Yeah. So good. Gosh, time has flown by, Steve. I could talk to you for a long time.
Likewise.
This has been so great. So what would you like to leave people with? I want to make sure that you get to say anything you want. So what would you like to leave people with when they're watching this podcast back
Well, one
or
is
listening?
turn it back to you. And I would just say this is a heck of a platform and an opportunity. So to the audience, they need to look to you as this is a sounding board, because you have, from where we started with just a conversation, I didn't know I'd be on the show. And I think that goes back into your successes and an invitation. Number two, if you're looking to save money, the message to the audience would be very simple. Have someone come in and do a diagnostic or forensics and either validate you have no issues or validate what you don't want to hear. Maybe there are issues, but you got to start with that invitation and awareness. And I would say third really gets into the acceptance. There's so many people out there, meaning clients at all levels, that ask and welcome change management. But at the end
Mhm.
of the day, they don't want change because it's a disruption to their day to
Right.
day. It's a great.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds great talking out of this side of the mouth, but it doesn't get
Mhm.
to the point of what you're focused on to get to this side.
Mhm.
And I think that that opportunity, you got to be willing at a senior executive level to take the onus of why you're even looking outside for input, period. If you're
Right.
looking outside, you already know the answer. Just follow your trust and your dream to
Mhm.
make your organization better. The last thing is what I want the listeners to take away is, the embracement of the value. Do you need to be a global organization, or can you trust a niche advisory council or
Mhm.
company? I can say 100% with confidence. The answer is yes. Yes, you can trust a smaller company that's going to be cheaper, because
Mhm.
those same likely people out there are the ones that help transform global companies, period.
Yes, that's
And so
true.
at a
Mhm.
fraction, at a fraction of the cost.
Mhm.
So, names are irrelevant. they're all great companies, but I think that's what I would want to convey to the listener. And the last fourth or fifth final bullet point goes back into the example, and that is when you love what you do, and sometimes I'll ask myself, why do I love what I do? For the reasons I mentioned. It's an easy job because it's something you're passionate about.
Yes.
And I think passionate is contagious because they know your vested interest is in making them better, not you. And I go back into the children to a coach to a player. That's the last message is, and I'll leave it in this kind of a context. I wish I knew how to use tools, which is kind of an oxymoron since I manage and I'm an expert in 60 industries. But if you ask my wife, she would say, you don't even get a chance to paint because you screw stuff up. So I would say the message is coach to player, but leaving them a toolbox and teaching them how to be a master craftsman is the most rewarding experience. So making them better.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, so good. Those are great, great takeaways. Thank you so much, Steve. I know we could just talk for a long time. I might have to have you back on the show, and just have fun conversation. So it's always fun to talk to other people that have so much experience out there. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. We are going to put all of his links in the show notes. We'll be excited for your book to come out. Steve,
Thank you.
do you have any kind of a date in mind, or where is it on the horizon?
My hope is 5 months.
Okay.
We're pretty far into it, call it maybe middle way of the book. And I think, the goal of that was, and you know this far better than I'm a rookie, but the thing that I took away from it is how much is too much do you give away? Walking that fine line, but it's been a wonderful experience. So 5 months is my hope. And I'm not looking to make a big coin. It's more about the personal goals of my own. And helping a CFO and a COO really have a toolbox, back to that analogy, but being able to make some crisp decisions without accepting the risk of an uncertain. And that book is designed, which will be about the world of integrated facilities management, but it's also looking about where the future is now, but only getting faster moving forward. Because our world of property management is not like the world it has because of AI. So anyways, I'm pretty excited about it. I want to make others back to that coach to player opportunity. And that's the hope, 5 months.
Well, I want to throw this out there to you because this might help other people too. How much do you give away? Honestly, you cannot give enough away because the reality is nobody really gets transformation from a book. A book opens the door. So you don't have to worry about that, Steve. They're still going to need you.
Well, I hope. And
it's just going to build the value. It's just going to build the value of you. So I'm
going to lean on you, Ann.
All right. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much. We will put all of his links in the show notes. You'll be able to reach out to him. He's also very active on LinkedIn. You can find him on LinkedIn, connect with him. And Steve, I just wish you all the best in the future. And with the expansion of your company, it's exciting to watch. I love to see entrepreneurs that are go-getters. They're driven. I see so many people that play small. They don't go after it. And so when I come across people that are trying to do big things, I just love it. I know I have to have them on here. So thank you.
Well, thanks again for the platform, man. This has been personally rewarding to me. You made it easy, and that'll be a message back to the viewers. As I came in a little nervous, which I don't get nervous, but I
said, hey, let's just have some fun.
Thanks for making it easy. That's my feedback. It's
awesome.
Wonderful.
You are welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Make sure you share it. And I always say sharing is caring. Make sure you subscribe to the show. And we thank you so much for listening. God bless you and go rock your business. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Ann.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in today. If you're as excited as I am about scaling up your influence, business, and bank account, then I have just the thing for you. But first, make sure you subscribe to the show. Second, make sure you share it with someone you care about because sharing is caring. And third, head on over to join me in my next free virtual exclusive workshop where we'll explore proven strategies to boost your business and maximize your potential. Look, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're looking to take your business to the next level, my workshops are designed for you. So head on over to expertinyouworkshop.com to reserve your spot and get ready to transform your expertise into extraordinary success. I'm looking forward to seeing you there and helping you achieve incredible growth. Until next time, make sure you're always seeking the expert in you, and God bless. Have an amazing day.